Okay. So Mounira, who is the CEO and co-founder of Connected Business. So what Mounira is responsible as giving leadership tools, leadership principles, and delivering similar workshop we should be doing today to different businesses to grow and ways they can expand. So I'll leave that over to Mounira now to continue and to introduce herself.
Thanks so much. It's really great to be here in so many ways. So first of all, because Carol and I used to be former colleagues, but also because what BLIX stands for is actually really also close to my heart, and the topic that I will talk about today is also close to my heart. And so what I want to share with you today is like, I call it the 3 ahas about emotional intelligence at work, and basically why it's important in the workplace, but also in these days and times. And before we do that, before we go into the content of it, I would like to do a little practice with all of you. And I call it the minute to arrive. So just take a moment where you just like put away everything and close your eyes. Bring your feet to the floor. And take 3 deep breaths. Deeply in through your nose and out through your mouth. Deeply in through your nose, fill your belly with air. And when you breathe out through your mouth, relax your jaw, your shoulders. One more time, deeply in. And when you breathe out, relax. Notice your feet on the floor. And take a moment to just check in with yourself. How are you feeling? What's your inner weather this day, this time? And just become curious about it. So just how is it right now? Is it sunny? Are there some clouds? Is it maybe a bit windy? And allow it to show up exactly as it is. Nothing to do about it, just observe. And take one more deep inhale. And open your eyes again. Actually, this is a very effective method for someone to arrive, no matter where you're coming from. Maybe you had another meeting before or other thoughts are there, and just like allowing yourself to arrive where you are right now. And there's a really, really nice story that one of the participants of a course once told me about that specific practice, which is, so yeah, every day when he goes home, his children are waiting at the door, and they're like, "Papa!" and they're running across him and, you know, screaming and telling him the whole day and everything that happened in this 1 minute, right? And what he says is, this is happening for years every day. And actually, I'm usually full in my head still at work. I'm stressed out. It's actually a bit too much for me to experience that. But somehow, after this, you know, training, this emotional intelligence training, I just decided to stay in my car before I go to my family and just take a moment to arrive at home, to just let go of everything that was at work, to really arrive with my family. So he's doing this practice in his car. And then he described, so I went home, I opened the door, and same thing happened like every day. My children would just run towards me, and it was loud and chaotic. And he said, but what happened for me is, for the first time, I noticed how happy they were to see me. I never saw that before. I never saw the joy in their eyes and in their faces. I never saw how much they love me and what a precious gift it is to be welcomed by two people in such a loving way every day. So this is why these kind of exercises are so powerful, because they can give us those moments that we miss when we are in our head and still in other stuff. So we're not really fully seeing what's happening in front of us. Yeah, there's a little anecdote and maybe a little bit about me. Why am I here, and what makes me, speak to you about mindfulness and emotional intelligence today. So I'm the daughter of a migrant family. So my parents migrated from Tunisia to Germany. And my father was a classical guest worker. So it's basically, the story goes like this. There were these trucks going through Tunisia, and they said, who wants to work in Germany? And for Tunisian people back then, that was the better life. So he jumped on that truck, and that's how he ended up in Germany. So I was born in Germany. But as you can see, clearly, I don't really look German. And that made me struggle a lot when I was a young child, because not only did I always look different than anyone else, and that's why everyone always asked me, where are you from? But also no one could spell my name, and everything was complicated. But also I grew up in this different culture at home. And every time I went out of my home, there was a different world awaiting me. And what it did was just like creating this inner divide inside of myself, not knowing who am I in this. My mother said, you're Tunisian, you will always be Tunisian, it's never going to change no matter how long you are here. But when I went to Tunisia, everyone said, oh, the one from Germany is here. So it wasn't really my home, right? And also I never lived there, so it was I never felt at home there. Although I love my family and I love the culture and I feel this is my heritage, it was never my home. And after years of crisis as a young girl, there was this one point when I just decided, you know what? If I can't be this and I can't be that, I'm just going to choose who I want to be. And that's going to be me. So that was kind of like a decision I made back then. Back then, little did I know that it had anything to do with mindfulness, but I will explain to you later on what it has to do with it. So then at some point, I entered the business world, and I was in very corporate. I had a very corporate career. I was working for BMW, for Red Bull, for Google, and for people who work in corporate environment, no, there's a certain culture, a certain way of behaving. And I don't know what it was, probably my migration background, but because of that, I always didn't feel I fit in, right? So it felt like a repeating story, just differently, but it was different. What was the same was I was having different ideas. I was thinking differently about things. I wanted to try out new things. And I think the migration background helped me to actually have a resilience towards not fitting in. So I was okay with that, right? I was born like this. And so I was always questioning also, how are we doing things? And is this the right way? And this actually also brought me into a little bit of a crisis, because what I noticed is if I follow the unwritten rules of business life, meaning a lot of political games, a lot of power play, a lot of power over. If I follow the way that everyone behaves, I actually don't want to be that kind of person. But what do you do when you start out, you're a young professional, you do what everyone else is doing. So I wasn't really questioning, I was just doing what everyone else was doing. But after a few years in business, I noticed not only was I totally feeling I lost myself, but when I really looked into the mirror, at first I pointed the fingers on others and said, they need to, this is not okay, this is not a culture I like. But then I looked into the mirror and I noticed I'm doing this exactly the same stuff. And if I'm really honest, I feel like I'm a real asshole. So that was a moment of truth that I really had to have to understand that I don't want to be that way. And the question that became really strong in me in that moment was, okay, what's the kind of person I want to be? What is my personal purpose? Who am I authentically? Even if an environment has a certain culture, can I be myself in this? And can we create business cultures within companies that offer a culture where a diversity of different human beings who are just authentically themselves is possible? So for me, it wasn't just about nationality or about gender. For me, it was, how can we create environments where we accept everyone the way they are? And on that journey, I also found that it's possible. First of all, it was possible for me to be more authentic, to be authentically me, no matter in which environment. When I became a leader, after some time, I noticed I can be a leader, but I don't have to be an asshole to be a leader. I don't have to power over my people. I can actually empower them. I can be vulnerable in front of them. I can show them, my strengths and my weaknesses. I had this picture of a leader needs to always be strong and know everything and be beyond everything, because this is what I was seeing everywhere. But I said, I don't want to be like this. I actually want to show people when I have a bad day, or I want to talk about things I'm not good at. I actually started doing that. And people said, yeah, but people don't follow you if you don't have a certain authority, or if you don't wear certain clothes and all these things. But I just wanted to play around. What if I question all these things? What's going to happen? And what happened is that I didn't really even recognize. So I just want to add this decision that I'm doing this. I'm going to show everything about me, my vulnerability, what I'm not good at. If I have a bad day, I'm just going to show it openly. And then a year later, I employed another person to our team. Back then I was at Google. And this person was, after a week of being there, I said, hey, how's it going? How was your first week? And he said, you know what? I was really nervous working here. I felt like, wow, there's so many talented people at Google. I don't know if I'm fitting in or if I'm good enough. But you guys all talk so openly about what you're not good at and what you fail at. I can just be myself. And you know what? That was for me the biggest compliment I ever received for my leadership style, that someone said, I can just be myself in this team. Because what I didn't recognize, and I went like, what are you talking about? I started observing the team, and what happened to me just being myself, everyone else started doing it too. And I didn't even recognize that we were so open, and that for other people, it felt like we were just talking about these things so openly. And it really started with myself. So this was part of my journey. And then at one point, I heard about this emotional intelligence training called Search Inside Yourself within Google. It was a pilot. It was a pilot for engineers only. There was this guy called Meng. He wrote a book about it, and he made this pilot in Silicon Valley within Google. And he said, let's test it out. Let's test out what emotional intelligence is doing. And this pilot was so intriguing for me, because I felt like all the things he was explaining was my experience in finding out how I can be myself in a business environment and lead differently. It checked all my boxes, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And I texted him and I said, why is this only in Silicon Valley? We have to do it in other offices, and we have to spread the word about it. And he said to me, well, you can do it, but there's no, we have no headcount, there's no role for this. You have to do it next to your job. And I was like having a full-time job, leading a team. I was heading PR for 3 countries. So I was busy, overly busy, basically. But I said, I don't care, I'm going to do it. And this is how I kind of got involved in mindfulness-based emotional intelligence, because mindfulness was already a practice that helped me so much to be more authentically me and be a better leader. But I never made that connection between mindfulness and emotional intelligence. And I will tell you a little bit about it in the talk. But the powerful part of it was that I saw what happened to people when they did this. And I saw how powerful it was. And I asked myself, why did no one ever teach me about this? Why did I never hear about these things when they are so important, and when my own experience by just finding things out by myself showed me that these are the crucial skills that we need in business, in leadership, in any kind of way of doing any kind of work. So basically, I became a Search Inside Yourself teacher, and until today, I was teaching courses for more than 20,000 people in companies all over the world. I was in Africa, I was in Russia, I was in the US, I was in Dubai, in so many different countries, in so many different, companies and leaderships, and it's the same thing for everyone. When it boils down to the skills that we need these days, they are all the same, and emotional intelligence is one of the key skills we need in these days and times. And I will show you a little bit about why. So first of all, why do we even need any kind of new skills? This is a slide I've been showing before COVID already, but now everyone feels it's so true, which is we are living in a time of rapid change. And this time of rapid change is not just, has not just started, but now through COVID, we saw how rapidly our whole world can change. And this is the time we're in. And when you look at the prognosis of the future of work and the future of our world, is going to stay like this. It's not going to get slower. Actually, it's going to get even faster. And technologies like AI will make our world even faster. And what it does, on the one hand, things are getting much, much faster, but we all are still human beings, which means what I'm seeing a lot is that overwhelm becomes a thing for many of us, that we feel overwhelmed by the choices we have, by the amount of information, but also by seeing and being aware of the global conflicts and happenings in our world. It does something with us. It's like we never have a moment to just pause it and not do anything. But we keep going, after the project is before the project. We keep going from one project to the other. We keep, getting all this information from the organization that we work with, but also all the surroundings, all the people, all the social media, and it's a lot. And so overwhelm is not something some people have and others not, but it's actually a sign of our time. It's a sign of we are not machines, we are human beings. But what is asked of us feels like we're being machines, right? We have to function a lot. And then we live in a time of disruption. So all these things that are disrupting right now, which is like the digital work, we're working digitally. It's totally normal to work from the computer. Who would have thought that a few months ago, that we would do everything, online? AI and automation, will make things much, much faster. World markets, global crisis, and our mother nature, right, that is also in distress. So all these, it's kind of like a lot of topics, and I don't want to sound negative, but this is just the reality of where we're at. And there's another thing that comes up, which is the purpose. More and more people asking themselves, what's the meaning of all of this? What am I doing here? Why am I even here on Earth? What's my contribution to this? And more people want that meaning in their life, not just working 9 to 5 to check boxes, but find more meaning in what they do. So what can we do in this time of disruption that is really difficult? And one of the answers, and the answer that I want to give you today, is in times when machines go into their evolution, we as human beings need to go into our very own evolution. And that evolution is we have to learn certain skill sets. And one example I love to give is imagine our world, the working world and our entire world in 10 years would be French speaking, right? So in 10 years, everyone would speak French, the world would be French speaking. So if from now on today, let's say, I would say, I'm gonna eat a baguette or a croissant every day, until those 10 years are over, right? In 10 years, I would still not speak French, right? But this is what we're doing right now. We're eating croissant and baguette and thinking that that is a way how we learn this new language, this new skill set. But actually what we need to do, we need to learn the vocabulary of it. We have to learn the skill set of it. So when in 10 years, this world is shifting like that, we can speak that language. And one of the most important skills that we will need for that is, and you might not be surprised about that, is emotional intelligence. And why that is, I want to explore a little bit with you. So first of all, these are 3 aha moments that I had about emotional intelligence, and I will share them with you. So first of all, emotional intelligence is key as a skill set for the future of our work, for the future of our society, actually. The third one is that enhancing those skills actually helps us to live this new paradigm that is awaiting us. So let's look at the first one. Why is emotional intelligence even key? So first of all, maybe just looking into emotional intelligence, what is emotional intelligence? And these are basically, Daniel Goleman is an expert in emotional intelligence, and he brought together the most important keys of emotional intelligence. So what he speaks about is, the first part is self-awareness. So self-awareness is really the first fundament, understanding ourselves better, being able to reflect ourselves, being aware of what we're doing and how this affects our actions. The second skill of emotional intelligence is self-management. So this is a way how we can, like many people say, right now when so much is happening outside, I feel like I'm not on the driver's seat of my life. And this is what self-management means. Instead of being driven by our life, having the driver's seat of our life, no matter how the circumstances are in the outside. And maybe you can already notice how much of an important skill that is these days when so much is happening. It's also about motivation. That's the third competency, which is what motivates me and every day in my life to go to work, what motivates me in life, what is really important for me, what are my values, when am I in integrity and when am I not? So these questions are really important. You see, the first 3 competencies are very much internalized competencies, so they are very personal to us. And then the next competency is empathy. And when it comes to empathy, first of all, empathy is a skill, so we can put ourselves into other people's shoes. And when we think of diverse environments and companies, it's so important that we can take the viewpoints of other people, that we can see different perspectives. And empathy also means, and that's a very important part of empathy, is to distinguish between my own emotions and what's the emotions of others. So I give you an example. Let's say you're really stressed out on a day, stressed out in the workplace, you have so much to do. But next day you're really, really chilled out. And so you go into the workplace, you're chilled out, you had your coffee, you had a good night's sleep. And then what happens is you come into a room full of stressed people. So what chances are 5 minutes later, you feel as stressed as everyone else. And this is where empathy is actually a skilled and trained empathy means that we can distinguish in such a moment and see, wow, I'm not feeling stressed. This is my environment. And then we can let go of that. Because we are empathetic beings, so we mirror not only our own emotions and emotions of people that are close to us, but we mirror our environment. And the last part is called leadership, but I don't mean leadership in the form of a leadership role. Leadership is the way to inspire and influence others. And everyone can do that, no matter if you are in a leadership position or not, you can inspire others, you can go into leadership. So all those competencies are important when it comes to emotional intelligence. And so there's a great study actually done by Adecco Group that looked into what are the most important changes that have occurred since COVID started. And one of the things that they found out in their study is that emotional intelligence is actually the key to any kind of leadership. They call it, it's the gold standard. Isn't that interesting? I really call it the gold standard. But also what is really interesting is one of the key parts of this whole emotional intelligence journey is that what people found out is emotional intelligence is a skill. It's a trainable skill. So we all can train it. It's not that one person has it or others don't, but we all can train it. So just like think of a great leader and skills that you really value in a great leader. And maybe just like put into the chat, what are great skills that you value in a leader? Just like put in one word. What is a skill when you feel like an outstanding, important, great leader? What are skill sets that you value? Just type it into the chat, like one word or two. Open-minded, yes. Great listener. Mm-hmm. What else? Good feedback. Mm-hmm. Empathy, yes. Genuine. Mm-hmm. So just from that few words that I read out, integrity, how many of those skills do you think are connected with emotional intelligence? Like how many of those skill sets and qualities that you just mentioned are connected with emotional intelligence? Just type it into the chat. And what do you think? How many of those skills? Asha says 100%. All. Yeah. Right? So it's all or most of them. And so that's why it's so surprising that no one speaks about emotional intelligence at workplace. Although when we think about outstanding teammates, when we think about outstanding leaders, the qualities that we value in them are completely linked with emotional intelligence. And there's a very interesting study that has been actually done at Google that has looked into what are the most successful teams globally, what makes them more successful than other teams worldwide. And the number one factor they found out is psychological safety. And psychological safety was actually described as a way of making people feel they can say what their opinion is, they can express themselves individually, they can also make mistakes and don't feel they will be judged by that. So that was the number one success factor in all the teams worldwide. And they even compared the engineering teams with the sales teams because they wanted to know, is this true for sales teams and engineering teams? And they found the same results. Even the sales teams with the higher psychological safety were the ones who were most successful. And so interestingly enough, what do we need to create psychological safety in the team? Emotional intelligence is the key ability, so we can actually notice if a team is psychologically safe or not. And yeah, because of those findings, actually this emotional intelligence training called Search Inside Yourself was not only developed and integrated at Google back then, but SAP, which is not a very modern company in the first view, but actually they implemented it into their company. And they researched what is this program actually doing in our company. And what they found is they had a 200% return on investment because they saw that the absenteeism went down. So people weren't missing so much, weren't getting sick so much. The trust in the leadership went up and the engagement of the employees went up. So they could really measure that it had a huge effect on their company. So number one, emotional intelligence is key in the workplace and is a skill, that will help us to speak French in 10 years. The second aha is we all can reprogram our brain. You can reprogram your brain. Maybe you have heard of this term neuroplasticity before. And neuroplasticity is the skill that helps us to actually change the function and the structure of our brain. In other words, and I think this is why it was so convincing for engineers in Silicon Valley, because basically we said you can change your own software. What scientists found out is, and still finding out is, it seems like there is a new way of effective training. And this new way has to do with our brain. And what they found out is that certain practices help us to develop those areas in our brain that are responsible for emotional intelligence, self-awareness, self-regulation, and empathy. So if we start, activating those neural pathways in our brain that are responsible for self-awareness, self-regulation, and empathy, then we can actually use the skill set and we can change our brain towards that. And this is why, so it's a big aha moment that we can not only change our brain, but because we can change our brain, we can develop emotional intelligence as a skill, even if we have no empathy whatsoever to people, or even if we don't know how to regulate ourselves, we can develop those skills inside of us. And a powerful part of what the scientists found out was actually that mindfulness is the key. So mindfulness practice help to develop exactly those areas in our brain that are responsible for those skill sets of emotional intelligence. So mindfulness is not just, a spiritual meditation practice, but those scientists found out that the areas in our brain that are developed are the skill sets of emotional intelligence directly connected with them. And this is kind of like what the Search Inside Yourself training was about. It was about the science and then the emotional intelligence skills and how certain emotional intelligence qualities can be trained with certain specific mindfulness techniques. So this is the power. And the last one is really, the last aha is that enhancing those skills I remember when I started even talking about mindfulness in my workplace, I first didn't really want to talk about this because I thought if I tell my colleagues that I'm doing mindfulness, they're not going to take me seriously anymore. They might think, oh, she's a hippie now. They might, and I thought, oh, my boss might not promote me anymore. I'm like, what will that do to my reputation? I was afraid of talking about it even. And so what I did is I didn't say anything about it and just did it for myself. But the more it changed actually the way I was working and leading, I noticed, wait a second, this is too powerful not to share it. And I give you one example where I really notice the power of it. So as I said, I was head of PR, and in PR you very often have crisis communication, which means a lot of journalists call you about an issue and you have to answer it. And those calls were not really pleasant. Yeah, they were very annoying and I didn't want to make them. And it sometimes when I had 10 of those calls on one day, I went home and I was just exhausted. I was exhausted from the day. I was thinking, what am I doing here? Is this really how I want to spend my life? So I was really in this, thought process of not wanting to do it. And every time someone called, I was already grumpy before I even spoke to that person. And I had all my preconceptions in my head, what they're going to say. And I was fighting all day long. So then I did this mindfulness practice, which I was practicing already back then on a regular basis before I went into the next phone call. And I just stepped back and I just closed my eyes and I just noticed, wait a second, I'm already having these preconceived thoughts about what's going to happen. But maybe that person that's calling me is just doing their job. It's a journalist. They need to do their job, right? And then I noticed, wait a second, what if I'm just going to help them to make their job better? And how do I help them to answer their questions, right? It's valid that they have these questions, and I just need to help them with that. And so I took the next phone call after doing this practice, and I speak to this person, and in the head of my mind, I was like, I'm just going to help this person to do their job good. So I took the phone, and it was the same questions that all the others asked me. And it's like this person wanted to be critical. But instead of being negative and flipping out, I had the most amazing phone call with this person. It was fun, it was engaging, I was all in. I really wanted to help that person. And this person really noticed that I wanted to help that person. So it became even a friendship between me and that journalist. And after the call, I stepped back and I was like, what just happened? It's the same situation. Why did that change so much? And why it changed was really because I made this step back, which is part of, in mindfulness, it enables us to make this step back literally in our head and see reality as it is. Like this guy that I told you about who went into his car, and all of a sudden, after stepping back and letting go of his work thoughts, he could see the joy in the eyes of his kids. And that's what happened to me in that moment, when I noticed I'm in my head and I have a story in my head about what this person wants. And this is changing the whole way how this phone call works. And that was just a big aha moment. And I'm like, this is too good not to share. So I started sharing it with my colleagues. And I started a mindfulness practice group within the office. And at the beginning, one person came, two people came, sometimes no one came. But I was determined to do it 1 year, every day at 2, 1 year in a row. And I just kept doing it. But after a year, 800 people were there. And then I know in my boss at the beginning, who was skeptical, after me doing this for a few months, he received so many emails by his bosses, by managers, by so many people telling him how amazing this was and how much it helped them. So he couldn't say no to it anymore. But also I was scared to talk about it. But what I noticed is actually me doing that helped so many of my colleagues. And I was really like being of service for them, but also it helped myself to feel more authentic. I didn't have to hold back about this. And the funny thing about it was I even won an award for that. It was like a culture award for my contribution to the Google culture, and it was for the EMEA region, so Middle East, Europe, Africa. So I won this award, and my boss was even more astonished about this thing, because he was like, what's she doing? Okay, I let her do it because she wants to, but he thought I'm totally doing some crazy stuff. But it turned out doing that and making the leap brought me even more trust with my colleagues. It brought me more leadership, trust by my own leader, but also by many, many leaders who I've never seen before, but reached out to me because of this topic. And it kind of started making me an expert in these topics without me wanting to do that, and ended up becoming my business. So yeah, that's the reason why I did my business, was because people were spreading the word even outside of Google, and I got invited into other companies to speak about these topics. So what I want to say with this is those skills will make you a leader of the new paradigm, someone who has the skill set that we all will need in the future. And in 10 years, this is going to not just be a skill that we need, but it's going to be invaluable. And when you equip yourself with those tools, you will not only amplify your own emotional intelligence, but you will help those people around you. Because what I'm seeing throughout everywhere is people need these skills. People are suffering a lot with how things are, and no one knows how to do it because we've never learned those skills. We never learned them in school, and we never learned them in the skill sets in our business environment. And that's why it's so crucial. And I want to just read something to you that one of those corporations told us. This guy you see here, his name is Camille, and he's an engineering manager at a company called Metro Digital. And what he says is, introducing search inside itself to Metro digital was very rewarding and enriching. Despite my initial reservations, it turned out that so many of my colleagues are open and even yearning for integrative experiences this course provides, while others attended out of sheer curiosity, regardless of the source of motivation. The participants, we've seen overwhelmingly positive feedback about this, and the effects is both short and long-term perspective. So I love what he's saying about that. And I have a few other voices. I'm not going to read you all out. I basically want to convince you to see this as an amazing skill set. I'm just going to read one of them out. So ultimately being able to self-lead through challenging times, and with that, learn how you can lead others through these challenging times is key ingredient to manage change in an organization. And that's the thing, we're also in times of change and managing change in our organization for ourselves, but also for others. That's why when you have that skill, you'll be the one people will go to and seek for help in managing those times. And the thing is, we're going into a different paradigm, and this new paradigm needs people to step into it, and they become kind of the leaders of this new paradigm. What is this paradigm about? This paradigm is about creating a world that is more sustainable, that takes care of our planet. Is a way that this new paradigm is a different way of working that is based on trust and psychological safety, is a new way of working that values diversity, not just as a great token, but really sees the power in diverse human beings in a workplace, in a team, in a global world. And the new paradigm is a place where we're all empowered, and within our own power, we can help others to step into their own power without feeling it's competition, without needing to power over someone else. This is the new paradigm that is coming towards us, and we have the chance to build it. But it's up to us if we build it or not. And you know what? It's not just for us. That's one of the most powerful notions. Actually, whatever we're doing right now, whatever we're doing with this world and with this business environment is going to affect the next generations to come. So if you don't do it for you, do it for the next generation to come. Let's leave a world behind for those generations to come that we're proud of leaving behind. Let's leave them something that we feel is of benefit and of service for them. Let's leave our next generations an environment where they don't have to fight for being unique, looking differently, being in a certain gender or a certain race. Let's leave them a world that is open for all of this. And emotional intelligence is a skill, is not the only one, but it's one of the skills that can help us to be more open to others, to be more compassionate towards each other, to trust each other more. So at the very end of this presentation, I want to ask you, what is the future you want to create with your words and actions? Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here. If you have any questions around emotional intelligence or topics around, now is the time that you can ask your questions. Feel free to also unmute your microphone and say that, or if you want to ask your question in the chat, feel free to do so too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mounira. This was really great and very inspiring, and great to see you gave up the corporate life to pursue something you're so passionate about. And I completely agree that emotional intelligence is the key foundation to any successful leader. So thank you so much for this. My question is your last question back to you. So that's the previous slide.
Yeah. Want me to go back to that?
Yes, please.
This one?
No.
This one?
Yeah. So, Mounira, What future do you want to create with your words and actions?
The new paradigm that I spoke before about, that's what I want to create with my words and actions. And this is what I basically, for me, I want to be of service for the next generation. I want them to encounter a new world. And that's for me this new paradigm. And the chance right now is bigger than ever before, because we're in a time of disruption and change that we are in. Like, right, our ground is crumbling right now a little bit. But this is such a good soil for change, because everything is possible. And I want them to have a world where they are free to be who they are, and where there's no insecurity about that, and where they don't have to worry about any kind of like topics that we still worry about, like race. You know, it's not going to be a thing. We would see the value in diversity in all areas. And with diversity, I mean all kinds of uniqueness. If it is that I like working more in the morning than in the evening, that's for me also diversity. Or if it's like, I like to wear these certain clothes or look like this or whatever, like that, we just value differences as something good, as something precious. Actually, it's something that creates better things than if we would all see everything the same and think the same.
Amen. You're preaching to the converted here at BLIX.
Absolutely.
No, this is great. This is great. Maybe another follow-up question is, so what 1 or 2 actions do you recommend people take in order to start implementing this? When they go into the office tomorrow or log into Zoom tomorrow, what should they do? What actions would you suggest?
So I think the number one thing that I learned early on in childhood, when I told that story of, I started to choose who I want to be, you know, and I think that's really understanding that we have that freedom of choice. I think sometimes we forget that we have it because we are in an environment that gives us a certain reality and we think this is all the choice we have. And my experience with these things was there's always a choice. We can always choose differently. I don't have to play that game. If I don't want to have power games, I don't have to play them, right? I can't control the people around me, but I can always choose for myself and do things differently. And you might be surprised when you do it, how much people are seeking for one person who is doing things differently, because that gives others hope that there is another way. And so many times when I thought, oh, I'm the awkward one, I'm doing things in a way I shouldn't, or people look at me because I'm not doing it, there was this other amount of people that said to me, thank you for doing this. It gives me hope that I can also trust my own gut and my heart and what I believe is right. And no matter how our politics are, how our environment are, we can choose. It's our choice.
Yeah, I love that. I think 2 quotes from 2 inspirational leaders that really corroborate that is Steve Jobs. He says, when you realize that you can change the rules and push things in and poke them out and play around with them, and things don't need to be the way they've always been. Yes. That creates immense power and control. And I think the other one is from Jeff Bezos, and he says, in order to be successful, prepare to be misunderstood for long periods of time. People are saying, why are you doing that? That's crazy. Nobody does that. But suddenly you have innovation. So I think that's really powerful. I think that's something we can definitely take on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, just gonna piggyback from what Carl just said there. The quote about you have to endure while being misunderstood for a long-term purpose, right? You had a successful career, right? You worked at, you mentioned, you dropped some names earlier on Google, the energy drink, sorry, I forgot the name.
Red Bull.
So, yeah, having a shift in terms of obviously your career focus and direction to studying of your own thing. You have family and friends be like, oh, that's a crazy idea. You have security now. Why do you want to leave the security of, salary and environment where you're sure at the end of the month your paycheck is going to show up, but then setting up something from the scratch where you're not sure, how am I going to make it? Again, going back to emotional intelligence, right? say for instance, somebody finds themselves in such situation like that, how can they navigate and stay mentally sane? Because sometimes it's always the thought in your mind, that yeah. I hope you understand my question.
If I got it right, so first one was if I got a lot of critique to do my own business, and the other how I manage stress and everything. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Well, the first one, of course, a lot of people said I'm crazy. Having a job at Google is kind of like, it takes a lot to get there. I had like to take 10 interviews to get this job. So and I had an amazing salary, and, like I had everything. I was working for one of the biggest companies. I was in a leadership position. I could have like climbed the ladder even more, right? But the thing is, what my response to that was, I really mean it. I want to create a different world, and I want to put all my energy into that. And it's basically one of the reasons why I actually started working for Google was, so when I started, I was working for YouTube, and I believed in the power of democracy and diversity in YouTube. That was for me the reason why I even started working for Google, because I love the power of the internet to let different voices speak, and allow all diversity also of news and of ways of seeing the world. And I loved empowering that. And but also in my role, I did a lot of things. I spent a lot of time with things that didn't contribute to that. And I felt like I want to take all my life energy into this. And to be honest, of course, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur now for 5 years. Building a startup is not easy. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of unpredictability. Many times I didn't know if I can pay my rent at the end of the month or not. But I am loving it every step of the way, and every time something is over and I see the effect and the service for the people, I just know it's worth it. Like there's no doubt about it. I never doubted it or regretted it for 1 second. That's the one thing. And how I deal with stress is I practice those things myself. I practice mindfulness, but also I have a very different rhythm of working. Another way of people saying I'm crazy, when I said, if I build my own company, I don't want to work 2 months every year. People were like, what? You want to build a startup and not work for 2 months a year? And I said, yes, I don't want to be in this roller coaster 12 months of a year. And ever since Connected Business has been launched, I've been doing that. And 2 months a year, I'm just doing something else. I'm living on an island. I'm writing a book. I'm doing everything that I always want to do. And I don't do a sabbatical once a year. I do it every year. And I live the life I want to live every step of the way, not just when I have vacations or weekends. This is the kind of life I want to live while I'm of service for the next generations to come. So it's like, it's not stressing me out because I'm not allowing that kind of lifestyle anymore. But this is also because I'm, in my own business. If you're not in these circumstances, and I had that too within Google, obviously, and in the other companies, it's really about choosing again, how do I spend my time? Do I really need to be 12 hours in the office and read every email I'm receiving, for example? And one thing I noticed is, no, I don't have to. Once I know what's really important for me, I can let go of many, many things that are not necessary. And I noticed that working less made me more effective, better in my job, achieving better results. Is really like, it was just my head that thought I have to overwork and being stressed all the time. So I had to really learn that I can be successful without being stressed. And this is actually even better, not only for my job and my results, but also for myself. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you. I think that goes back to self-awareness. One of the key skills you said we can all learn, right? Self-awareness, knowing what you want, and having the confidence and boldness to go after that. Thank you so much for answering that. Mentorship, I think that's key as well, because sometimes I think at the early stage of my career, and when I was facing challenges, I thought I was the only person, or that challenge was unique to me. But then when I found mentors to talk to, just to share those experiences, it gave me the opportunity actually to gain a different perspective. Obviously, it's not say, oh, give me advice, or them to tell you what to do, but just somebody who listens and shows that compassion and empathy, like Mounira shared earlier on, gave me a bit more confidence, right? Made me more, should I say, not comfortable, but at least made the situation not as bad as it was, and gave me that safety net to say, okay, I have somebody I can go and share my work experience with. I have somebody who would listen, So so maybe a mentor, right? Like Mounira said, you can hit her up. She's also a mentor on BLIX as well. We have a profile of other BLIX mentors available on BLIX.network. So if it's something that may be helpful, you can use that as a tool to help you mentally. Yeah. All right, and while Mounira is still here, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself. I'm not sure how much more of a time we have.
Thank you.
And I just want to add one more thing, which is when I started talking about overwhelm, I didn't want to talk about it because I thought if I talk about being overwhelmed, people will maybe think I'm incompetent, right? When I started talking about it, 80% of the people in the room said they felt the same. And I found it so interesting. No one spoke about it, but everyone said, I feel the same. How much me sharing it with others showed me also, oh, I'm really not alone in this. There's so many that feel exactly the same, and making it less of a taboo topic.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. It was such a privilege to have you guys here on the workshop. Thank you, Mounira, again, for sharing your experience. It was very insightful. Some of the things we know, but it's also nice when you learn again, just to bring them to your remembrance, to keep those practices. Thank you so much for shining your light. Again, thank you so much for being bold to start off something that obviously we did not know we need, but now we know that we need it. Yeah, thank you. The recording will be on the website at BLIX.network. So just keep an eye. And like I said, we do have some other mentors on the platform available. If you need to chat with anybody about your career, even your mental health, we have senior leaders who are skilled in those areas, like Mounira, who are willing to share and you can learn from. So that will be it, guys. Thank you so much. Everybody have a good evening. Until next time.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.